And now, the show for people who have a fantasy team, but no time to run it. Who were well prepared for draft night, but not for the weekly grind of a long season. It's The Cheat Code, a shortcut to Sunday excellence, starring fantasy guru Kenny Parker, and hosted by sports radio veteran Mark, the Phantom Lowe. So let's get to it. Here he is, the Phantom.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Cheat Code. This episode going out to all those people who drafted Justin Tucker in round 8 of their fantasy draft and took a lot of crap for it. And I'm talking about myself, of course. I am the Phantom Kenny Parker right over there. Parker, how you doing?
Pretty good. Took it on the chin this weekend, but, I'm back and ready to rumble.
Well, I'm a radio veteran who doesn't know enough not to schedule a visit to the dermatologist on the day of a show. And you are a fantasy guru who is 1 and 2.
This is true.
So I get people stopping me on the street all the time, not related to the show. They just stop me. But they also ask me, hey, how's Kenny doing all the time? They always ask me, and I got to say, he's 1 and 2. And they're like, well, I'm going to find me a new guru.
Yeah.
Why do they not need to go look for a new guru, Mr. Parker?
Well, yesterday morning when I got up, I felt like maybe they did, but,
So you were down in the dumps
I was down in the dumps.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I scored the second most points in the league this week.
Yes.
And I ran into the team that scored the most points. Your son Kyle took me down 173 to 160, and that's one of those things that happens. I made pretty much all of the right decisions. I got a good kicker, a good defense in there that really, really maximized my points. I did the best I could, and it just wasn't enough, and that's all you can ask for. So my process was good. Kyle, just, congratulations to him. His team was just a little bit better.
So you can't always just look at the record. You don't just look at the standings and go, well, the team that's 3-0 must have – that guy's a genius, and the person that's 1 and 2 has no idea what they're doing because, like you said, it's a matter of the points. So if you're trying to see if your team is playing well or if you're doing the right things, you're looking more at your team's points, right, than you are at your standings.
Correct, yeah. And like I said, I would have beaten any other team of the other 9 teams or 8 teams in the league besides me and Kyle. I would have beaten any of them. I just ran into a buzzsaw.
But you didn't, and that's what's great. That's what's great. So on a
Everyone
week
cheers.
that we start off with the first annual Player of the Week award, of course, it is Justin Tucker.
Right.
Let's move on. Kenny, you gave us a little glimpse into your process, but let's officially go take a look at what goes on inside the mind of a fantasy guru.
Okay.
Inside the mind of a fantasy guru. It's time for Parker's Process.
Parker's Process, starring Kenny Parker, our fantasy guru. Kenny, an easy one this week, as it happened. It happened to me 3 years ago, and many guys. It's a situation that affects maybe 10 or 20% of the field each year, but everybody's had it happen to them. You go out there, you get the number 1 pick, you get the number 2 pick. A couple of years ago, it was me. I got Saquon Barkley. I was all happy. This past 2 years, actually, it's been Christian McCaffrey. You get your pick. You get the one guy. And in most leagues, that means you don't get a pick again for 20 picks.
Right.
So it's a big deal. And then your big horse goes down. You're sitting there. We're like you getting up yesterday morning. We've pretty much given up on life.
Right.
Why shouldn't we? What goes into the process of how do you deal with losing your big horse?
Well, and here's the thing. If you lose them for just a few games, 2 or 3 games, it's less of a big deal than if you lose them for 10 or, God forbid, that dreaded whole season, which Christian McCaffrey kind of gave us last year. But Christian McCaffrey is the perfect example to talk about this year.
Okay.
He has a hamstring injury. He came up lame. He gave his owners 6 points and then nothing else. And if you manage to win with him doing that to you, good, congratulations.
Good on you.
Right, and I know some people that did, so that's great. And now you're looking at you have a hamstring injury, and they're saying he's not going to go on short-term IR, okay? So we know he's less than 3 weeks out because the short-term IR is 3 weeks. You have to be out at least 3 games.
Okay, so if you get put on there, you're done for 3.
You're done. So the fact that he avoided that is great news. Now it could be 1 week, it could be 2 weeks. So honestly, it all depends on your record. If you're 0-3 and you have a really bad team and you lost Christian McCaffrey, red alert.
You're pushing the panic button.
You're pushing the panic button. If you're 1-2 and you manage to get a victory, or you're 2-1 and he's going to be out, you need to aggressively go after a running back off the waiver wire. And there's one there for everybody. It's Chuba Hubbard, his backup.
Yeah.
And hopefully you have a high enough waiver priority or enough fab free agent budget acquisition money, or you just have the number 1 priority. and you can get Chuba Hubbard to fill that gap and get you by for the next couple of weeks. If you don't have him, get another running back. If you need to make a trade and sacrifice somewhere to get treat it almost like a bye week.
Okay.
Okay, and it should be enough to get you by. The problem with Christian McCaffrey is he had injuries last year, and they weren't supposed to be long term, and then they just kind of lingered.
Yeah,
right?
and isn't it a situation where with the wide receivers and with running backs, the hamstring, even if they say one, I'm always counting 4.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week, and we talked about Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, and actually it was Jason Locken4 on Twitter this week. I think it was yesterday. They put out a statement, and there's different grades of strains, 1, 2, and 3, and maybe 4 of hamstring, each one being progressively worse.
Okay.
This was classified as a 0.5. Okay?
Oh, so it's
less than a 1.
It's a tweak.
It's a tweak. So for now, let's stay calm, right? That would be my process here. And do something to get you by. If you already have 2 starting running backs, you usually flex a running back. Maybe you pick up a wide receiver to flex this week to get you by. If you can get Chuba Hubbard and you're the Christian McCaffrey owner, that's probably what you should be aggressively trying to do. Because for then, as long as Christian McCaffrey's out, you have his backup in there.
Right.
He's not going to get the same workload as Christian McCaffrey, but he's going to get enough to somewhat replace that production for you.
And I think that in a lot of leagues, Dalvin Cook was second, and also he was out. He missed the last game.
Right.
His prognosis is he going to be out for a couple more games, or is he back?
They're saying that he may be. I would say that it's more than likely that he will be back this week.
Okay.
But we still don't know. It's something that you got to monitor throughout the week, and we're going to talk about injuries a little bit later, and I'll go into a little bit more of my process there. But that one is still kind of up in the air. He missed last game, obviously. I can't remember. I think he might have been hamstring too. No, he was ankle. So they were saying maybe he could have played, but Alexander Madison came in and did just
great.
fine.
Yeah.
So
So in this case with McCaffrey, if you have McCaffrey, then unless you're 0-3, you're not going to panic. You're just going to kind of try to limp by or try to get by until he comes back. And then, of course, if in 2 weeks from now he's not back yet and they're looking at it differently, then you're going to have to readjust.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. We're constantly adjusting.
That's absolutely. So there you go. If you have McCaffrey, don't worry, people. Don't worry. You're going to be fine. Kenny will talk you through it. It'll be fine if you have Dalvin Cook, if you have McCaffrey. So that's
right.
Parker's process for today. So, Kenny, let's move on because I want to talk a little bit about some of the players and what they did last week. It's a segment that we've called many different things, up and down, who's up, who's down, cold and hot. But I think I've come up with a real good idea for this segment.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life.
Who left it on the field and who left it in the locker room. Time for good and bad on the cheat code.
Now, a lot of guys or a lot of shows do this. They just look at who. Okay, they look at the whole league and say who was great. There's a couple of running backs, a couple of wide receivers. I think we're going to do it by position groups, at least for this week and next week. And I think Kenny, I gave you the task. Go through the results from last weekend and take the quarterbacks. Let me know who's the good and who's the bad, because I know that the traditional fantasy football is like running backs and wide receivers. That's where the points is. But we've got a new breed of quarterback now, a guy who gets your points throwing, but he also gets your points running. So
right.
I think we pay a renewed attention to that quarterback position. So give me a couple of the good for the quarterback.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember is bye weeks are coming. So
already? We just started.
Yeah, they're coming. So you want to start thinking now and see, okay, what guys could I possibly pick up? Streamers, as we say. One of the guys who's on the lower end, who's actually been playing well all year, is Kirk Cousins. Now,
no, you can't. If you get Kirk Cousins, everybody makes fun of you.
Yeah, well, if they did, they were wrong, because he's finished as the QB 13, the QB 6, and the QB 4 in the last 3 weeks. This last week, as he finished as the QB 4 in all of fantasy, he threw for 323 yards and 3 touchdowns against Seattle. And this guy's just balling out. If you're watching him, and I am, because I have him on my dynasty team, he's completing everything. He's got a 73% completion rate, which is really high.
That's incredible.
8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And he gets the Browns next week, but he gets them at home. And the Browns have been kind of an up-and-down defense. They really beat up on the rookie.
Yeah,
but
last week they went after him.
Yeah, this last week. But
they went after old poor Justin Fields.
Right, but we talked about how experienced quarterbacks that can deal with this stuff a little bit better go in with a good game plan, and Kirk has been doing it all year. So I think this is a really, really good test to kind of, is this guy really for real? And I think I think it's more likely than not that he has a good game. So
the crazy thing about that is we have a 10-team league,
Right.
the one that you and I are in. I don't know that anybody has him or starts him.
Yeah, and in most 10-team leagues, he's probably available on the waiver wire. Him, Tannehill, Baker, those guys are kind of like borderline. They might
Right.
be taken, they might not. Even in a 12-team, Kirk Cousins was like the 14th, 15th ranked quarterback
so
during
if he's
draft season.
4, 6, and 13, so that's 20. So that's about 7 or 8 overall
Yeah.
the first 3 weeks. That's a real good pickup.
Yeah, he's really playing well. He's got Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen
And
there.
Thielen's
Yeah, then
incredible,
he's got that new tight end Conklin that's playing well, and the other receiver he has, his name escapes me at the moment, but he's got a lot of weapons, and yes, they're running a lot, but they're throwing a lot too. So Kirk Cousins would be the first one I would bring up. The second guy I want to bring up is Justin Herbert. He was playing versus the Chiefs, and we talked about last week.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we talked about last week how he had been playing well, but he had really bad luck, and that was one of the reasons I liked Keenan for you.
For Keenan Allen,
Yeah, when we were talking about the process of who you should start. And he played really good against the Chiefs. It was a high-scoring game, and actually they kind of stomped the Chiefs a little bit, which I didn't see that coming, but the touchdowns finally came. He had that regression. He played the same as he had been, but this time he got 4 touchdowns. So he finished with 281 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he got you 16 rushing yards on the ground, but he scored nearly 40 points in fantasy. So he gets the Raiders next. Their D and especially their pass rush and pass D is a little bit better than we all thought it was going to be.
Yes, it is.
But again, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. The Raiders seem to want to go into overtime every game. So
there's a lot of chances.
Yeah, there's a lot of chances, and the game's never really over when you're playing the Raiders, it seems like. So I think it could be a high-scoring game. I would start him with confidence. Obviously, he's a starter anyway.
Yeah, I think more than Cousins, he would probably be a starter on your squad anyway.
But I just wanted to highlight that because I know Herbert owners were nervous. We told them not to be, and now you have some proof of that. The next guy I was going to bring up is actually the guy on the opposite side of the ball, and that's Derek Carr. Derek Carr is playing out of his freaking mind,
and everybody is saying so. That's the hot thing to say is something. Who's playing good? Derek Carr.
And when I put into my calculator and I did the numbers, I was like, wait, do that again?
The Parkonometer?
Yeah, I had to do it over maybe 3 times to make sure it was true. He's on pace for nearly 7,000 passing yards.
Okay, and
34 touchdowns.
That would, I think, be a record.
Yeah, he has 1,200 passing yards through 3 games. So he's just going nuts. And it seems like if you look at it, he was doing it at the end of last year too.
Yes.
We talked about the last 5 or 6 games in fantasy. He was scoring and throwing for a lot of yards and touchdowns. And his receiving core, like we talked about, they're starting to come together. You got Ruggs, you got Renfro. Of course, you have Waller,
sure.
And then you have that Brian Edwards cat.
Edwards guy.
Yeah, and
Edwards cat.
Yeah. And so they're not running the ball effectively. Josh Jacobs is still hurt. The guy who came in, Peyton Barber, he got most of his production at the end of the game when it was kind of the defense was wore down and it didn't really matter. But they weren't running the ball effectively most of it. And Carr was just slinging it. Yeah, and he makes those huge plays. So he's definitely someone you may want to pick up and hold or just watch and keep your eye on him. And when you get into those bye weeks and you need someone to grab and throw in there in a good matchup, Derek Carr, if he keeps playing like this, that's a guy you should look at.
Well, if he keeps playing like this, he won't be available for you to do that because I know that, like we have a 10-team league, so that's 20 quarterbacks. I mean, my backup is Matt Stafford.
Right.
So, I mean, you're getting high-quality guys on your bench because Matt Stafford is tearing it up.
Yep.
And Carr's doing much the same thing.
Yeah.
I think the fact that the Raiders kind of petered off at the end of the season last year, what he was doing was kind of overlooked because they kind of fell apart team-wise.
Right.
And now he's coming in and they got a couple of W's. If they'd have lost both those overtime games, we'd be talking about, man, Derek Carr cannot bring it home. I don't know what Derek Carr's problem is. And now it's,
this guy's
Derek Carr. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, those are 3 good ones. I mean, Herbert's probably starting for most teams, but I think Carr and Cousins are people that you don't really consider starting them, and they're really tearing it up. How about you got somebody on the other side?
Well, the other guy I wanted to talk about.
Another good guy?
No, I got another bad guy.
Oh, a bad guy.
But another guy I really wanted to talk about because I know that you're always interested in this guy, and he's affecting your running back, and that's Matt Ryan.
Oh, God, what happened to that guy?
He only went for 19 points in 6 passing per touchdown leagues. He had 243 yards and 2 touchdowns, which, okay, that's all right.
Not that much more than I had.
But he fumbled it. There was a strip sack, and he never rushes for anything. He gives you nothing with his legs.
No, he does not.
So if he's not going to throw for over 300 yards and he's not going to get you 3 touchdowns, you're not going to want to start him. And he hasn't broken 20 points this whole year. So, he finished under 20 points 2 out of the 3 weeks, and the time he finished over, it was barely. But he's not throwing the ball downfield. And when I looked at it, over 30% of his passes are going to his running backs, and they're not very effective with them. They're dropping a lot of them.
Which is one of my guys, yeah.
And they're not getting a lot of yards with them. And so the offense is just very short and stagnant, and there's not a lot of big plays. And it's really having a negative effect on Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts.
So he's got two guys who can stretch that field. So is that coming, do you think, from Matt Ryan, or is that coming from the sidelines? They're not putting the right process on the field.
Right. I think it is coming from the sidelines potentially, because he lost his offensive coordinator again, and they just seem committed to the run, even if it's not working, and we shall see. He has a nice matchup this week with Washington, which that's funny to say.
It is, but I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying, right? We got to stay water, and Washington is not the defense we thought they were going to be, and they've been particularly susceptible to the pass. So I'm watching him closely to see if he can get it right this weekend, and if he can, maybe we'll worry about Calvin Ridley and Pitts a little bit less.
Is it possible, and this is kind of going outside the pale of football, that he sold his soul to the devil that one year to be MVP?
Maybe.
And the fact that he blew the lead in the Super Bowl, the devil just turned his back on him.
That was his payment.
Because since then, I don't know that. I mean, and the problem is he's Matt Ryan. So every year you're like, well, if I have to settle for Matt Ryan, that's actually pretty good. Hey, not a bad game. I didn't get my quarterback till the 7th round. I got Matt Ryan.
Sure.
Not bad at all.
He's going to throw it a lot.
Yeah, he's fine. He's got great receivers, and now he's got the wonderkind, who's the greatest player ever to play football ever, and he's got like 4 catches or something. So it's just, that's really a good one to point out, because I think he's coasted on his name a lot longer than most.
Yeah, and some people may have waited in the draft in 12-team, 14-team leagues and grabbed him thinking, just like you said, oh, he's going to sling it.
Yeah.
He's not the worst guy in the world. You would have been better off, or you'd be better off dropping him now for Kirk Cousins.
Well, yeah,
okay?
Absolutely.
The next guy I want to talk about is a guy I'm just talking about because I know you hate him.
Oh, good.
Okay? It's the guy you hate the most.
God, I hate this
and
guy.
And I don't think – I am 100% sure at this point that he's done.
Well, the problem with this guy is – I obviously hate him, but it's like we're hearing people talk about him that have been on his nuts for so long.
Like me.
And they want him, it's like they want him dead or something. Like, that guy shouldn't even be around. He looks like my grandfather, and they're just ripping him, treading him, which I'm loving, by the way. But it's just another example of, your opinion now is not going to be your opinion in 2 months, and nobody's going to remember it. So just say whatever you want to say now, because no one really cares.
And the guy
please continue.
Yeah, the guy we're talking about for everyone at home, Phantom knew instantly, but is Big Ben. Okay.
Big Ben.
And I watched some of these plays from this weekend and just started laughing. I mean, it looked like my 60-year-old grandpa was out there falling over and throwing the ball.
Your grandpa's
up in the
60.
air.
I'm going to wonder about your family tree.
I mean, I was like, maybe I could do a better job out there. I mean, that's where I was getting to.
He threw one interception. They keep showing that he threw the ball. His receiver was 5 yards away.
Right.
There was a defender 3 yards away, standing right in the way, and he threw it right to him. Yeah. And then he tried for it. Maybe he was just going to practice his tackling.
I don't
know. Then he missed the tackle.
But he's killing them. He threw a ton in this game, like over 50 times, and he ended up actually with 318 yards. But that's just because he was throwing it so much. He still only got 1 touchdown. He still had 2 picks, and he scored 17 points. And what I want to say about the Pittsburgh offense is that you start Najee Harris, who got a ton of targets. You start Deontay Johnson whenever he comes back. But if they're all healthy, I would worry about starting anyone else.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit later on if we get to it, as far as if you should sit or play him. And, Najee Harris at one time, didn't he have like 11 targets in the first half or something?
Yeah, I think he ended up
60 yards or something on those targets.
He ended up with, I think, 19 targets or 20 targets.
That's insane.
Which for a running back is just unheard of. But, the Pittsburgh Steelers are trying whatever they can to get any kind of production anywhere.
And the problem with him, too, is he's still really hard to tackle.
Oh, yeah, he's good in open field.
Yeah, well, and he, you can rush him and have 8 guys hanging on him. He just can't throw it over 8. It's like I used to say about Phillip Rivers. I'm playing him 6 yards downfield because he's not throwing it over my head.
Yeah. But, I mean, he's just washed. Washed is the word of the day for Big Ben. The last guy I want to bring up is Kyler Murray, and that's just because –
oh, nice.
Yeah, he had no passing touchdowns this week. He rushed for 1, and Arizona was running the ball in short yardage situations.
Yes.
Your man Hopkins didn't get any love. as far as touchdowns, which is weird. It was just one of those weird games. So I just wanted to let the Kyler Murray owners know.
Thank you.
This is just one of those games, okay?
Like Herbert had.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just happens from time to time. He was coming off back-to-back 40-point games in fantasy. So his 19-point game is not indicative of what's really going on. It was just some bad luck, and that happens sometimes.
Right,
so,
and if 19's going to be his worst, I know that's not really good, but
Yeah.
and that's his worst, and you have the rest of your guys are doing okay. You
Sure.
can get by, like you're talking about. If the guy had 6 points and you still won, if he gets 19 and you still make it, then
Yeah.
you go, I made it through his bad game, because you don't think he's going to have 2 of those in a row.
Yeah, that's his ultimate floor, it seems, with his
Yeah.
rushing upside, and he still rushed for a touchdown too, which is great. But yeah, they get the Rams next, so not a great matchup, but I'd start him with confidence.
Right.
Okay.
And after what the Rams did to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And I forgot I was going to wear my new Aaron Donald jersey. I'll wear that next week so you guys can see it. Good job, Kenny. That's
All right.
a look at the quarterbacks on the good and the bad. Really good look, and I think really you might want to write down that part about Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's that could get you through in a pinch, especially with the buys coming up. Well, let's move on, because I think that one of the things that characterizes this season and pretty much every season of football is who can make it out on the field.
Right.
So it's time to find out who's hurt and who's not.
Now let's find out who's hurting and if they're coming back. It's the injury report on the cheat code.
if you're watching on the YouTube, you were just treated to a fantastic The Visage of Mr. Kenny Parker,
Right.
put together by our engineer, of course, the great Stones McCoy. So, Kenny, I think we'll start off. I got a particular kind of a Parker's process question to ask you about injuries, but let's start off by telling us from the last week who kind of went down, when they might come back, when some guys who already been out, when they're coming back.
Right, and there were several high-profile guys that went down. Obviously, we talked about CMC. He had the hamstring. He avoided the 3-week IR. We're thinking 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah, that
okay?
0.5 sounded pretty good if you're a McCaffrey fan.
Yeah, it was like best case scenario.
Yeah,
or something
absolutely.
Like that. The next guy that went down, that's a big guy who hasn't been playing that well, but everybody's counting on him, is A.J. Brown. He had a hamstring, okay? And they're saying week to week. And when the coach comes out and says week to week, that usually means not this week. So I wouldn't count on A.J. Brown this week. Potentially it could be like McCaffrey's, but maybe a little worse. He's not going on short-term IR either. So I would say 1 to 2 weeks, probably leaning more towards 2. We don't have enough info yet on him, but I think he's going to miss this week. So if you're planning on him, you got to make some plans.
Yeah, we're going to do obviously our who to play segment later, but I think the injuries to players like him have a lot to do, impact on who you're going to play this week and some of the questions that you're going to get.
Yeah, and then in the Steelers game, the infamous one we were just talking about, Juju went down with ribs. He left the game early. He played like half. I don't think he came back in. They're saying day-to-day, but they're also saying he could potentially miss this week. So that's one of the ones, we'll talk about it in a little bit. You want to pay attention to the practice reports to try and determine if he's going to play. Deontay Johnson was out this week with a knee. I don't know if you remember that he hurt at the end of the game the week before on a meaningless play. He's supposed to start practicing this week. So we should hear tomorrow he's at practice. Hopefully that's the case. Hopefully he progresses, and he's going to be back. Sterling Shepard, our waiver wire pickup.
Yes.
That we recommended everyone.
And people, they picked him up too.
Yeah, receiver for the New York Giants. He went down with a hamstring. Another receiver for the New York Giants, Darius Slayton. He went down with a hamstring. They're both could miss some time. That's all that they've said. They haven't said day-to-day, week-to-week. It's very early in the week, but I would plan on not having Sterling Shepard and not having Darius Slayton. Anytime you get a hamstring, you figure it's going to be at least a week, unless some miracle happens. So they're gone.
The awkward moment of the week for me was when I'm playing my son, Zach, and we're watching the games together, and I'm looking at my phone, and 3 of his guys go out with hamstrings. In about 5 minutes, I'm like, I look at him, I'm like, did you? And he does, don't even tell me.
Yeah.
He says, don't even tell me.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, don't even tell me.
It's just the fantasy gods smite you. But yeah, hamstrings and ribs seem to be the injuries of the year so far. And
that's the name of my new barbecue joint.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
And speaking of ribs, Amari Cooper and your boy DeAndre Hopkins both had ribs. Amari was wearing a flak jacket. I think Hopkins might have been too. They both played through it last week, and they both kind of acted as decoys.
Exactly.
And we'll get into that in a second here, how you can kind of determine when that's going to happen. But I suspected that might be the case for both of them. But they both played through their injuries and got some work, and they should be better this week. So, another week, hopefully another week healthier. So that's what I got as far as injuries for this week.
Yeah, that's the thing with Hopkins and with like you say, if they do play through it, that really with Cooper and Hopkins, they do play through it, that encourages you because you can kind of like figure out if you want to play them this week, but that means they'll probably be back next week, and that you can look forward to. So yeah, it's kind of a secondary Parker's process 2.0. I have DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, he's the jewel of my team, and I'm watching to see if he's playing. He's questionable with the ribs. He's back and forth, going to play, not going to play, and it's not just figuring out if he's going to play or not. It's figuring out if he's going to play. And I have had Devontae Parker in the past, and he is the famous guy of, is he going to play or not? Well, he always plays, but then either they never throw it to him or he gets hit one time and he's back off. So with Hopkins and with the fact that it was ribs, my feeling is, if he gets hit once in the stomach, once in the ribs, he's going to be out again. So I decided not to play him. But how do you determine? First of all, obviously you follow it during the week. But how do you determine at the bottom line? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play him, or I'm going to go ahead and bench him and take the chance that he's really not 100%.
Right, and DeAndre Hopkins this week was like the worst case scenario, which is that we're getting practice reports and it's like he's not practicing.
Right,
he's not practicing. Thursday, Friday, he doesn't practice. He's a game time decision. Red alert. Anytime you hear that, he could play, he could not, and if he does play, he could be limited, right?
That's not good.
So usually what I do is I go online and I do some research on the player. DeAndre Hopkins is actually known as, if he does play, he's pretty tough, but he does sometimes act as a decoy. Okay, he has in the past. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw that, I was like, Phantom's probably going to be pretty smart, actually. Maybe I would bench Hopkins if I was him.
Well, we've talked about all the other weapons they have, too. If it was the old Cardinals, they didn't have anybody else, but now they got the midget guy they throw it to all the time. And
others.
A little person, I mean. and A.J. Green and now, Christian Kirk and stuff.
Yes,
so
Mm-hmm.
if they didn't have all those guys, I might have gone with them. But in this case, I'm like,
yeah, I mean, and that's more data that you use for your decision, and you process that perfectly. Yeah. You've got a guy who could be a decoy. He didn't practice all week, and they said game time decision. Okay, that's one thing. Then you've got depth everywhere, and Kyler's already been splitting the targets up 4 ways. That was a good clue to let you know, even if Hopkins plays, he may not get a lot of run. I still thought hopefully maybe he'd get a touchdown. That didn't work out. But you did a good job switching over to another player. You put Hollywood in there, who was fingertips away.
Oh, not even fingertips. Yeah. Don't even try to sugarcoat it.
Well, several plays.
Don't even sugarcoat it.
It was in his hands.
Jalen Hurts said if you drop a deuce, you don't look at it, you just flush it. He dropped 3 deuces.
Yes,
okay? That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I could have set the all-time scoring record. That's all I'm saying.
And you take some solace in the fact you had Cortland Sutton on your bench, who I probably would have played if I was you. He didn't score any more points than Hollywood. So you made a good decision. I think Hopkins ended up with less than both those guys.
Right, he did.
And your process was sound, and that's what you do. The one thing is, it's not always like that. Sometimes they're limited, kind of like Hollywood is, and then on Friday they come out and they go, they practiced in full, they're going to play.
Right.
Or they were practice limited, they're going to play. I think that's what Hollywood's was. And then normally I would start him at that point, okay? But you just have to pay attention to the practice reports. You'll get little updates on your phone and your app. If you don't have your notifications turned on, just click on the player and you'll get an update summary.
Right.
And it'll say what the status is of the player. And that's what I use to make my determinations as far as whether I'm going to play.
Yeah, the thing about Hopkins, too, is they said, well, he didn't practice, but, he has a history of not practicing and then playing anyway. And so I'm like, can you please just tell me yes or no? Is the guy going to play? And you've got to read between the lines and factor it in, like you said. Yep. So that's why I made the decision. But I think that's helpful because people just don't, you look at it, and if you don't do the research, you have no way of knowing. You've got to follow it day by day and see if there's any change. And, it's not exact science,
right?
But still, that's the only way to do it.
That's the only way to really do it. And like I said, you can Google injury status. You have Google, so you can ask Google almost any question that you want to know, and you just want to know his injury status is practice report injury. That's a good Google term.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and check it out. And if it says that they were limited, that means they're at least out there. Maybe they're in a non-contact jersey. They're probably going to play. And Bill Belichick was famous for this. He'll limit guys all week that he has no intention of sitting,
right?
And he's going to give them a heavy workload. So you never know. But if it says he's a game time decision and they're not practicing, that should be setting off alarm bells for you.
Okay, well, you've told us who's hurt when they're coming back. You told us who had good weeks and who had bad weeks. But a lot of us, we still have guys, with me, I still have weak position groups. I'm still looking around. I'm still trying to improve my team. So, when I look and I'm trying to add players, there's only one thing I can do.
When you walk to the garden.
Got a couple of holes in your roster? Get some help now with the waiver wire.
This is where you find out who you can pick, and this is where I think Kenny Parker, the fantasy guru, particularly shines. He finds a lot of diamonds in the rough and lets us know. Now, it may be a year and a half before the guy's good,
Sure.
but he's going to be good at some point, so who you have your eyes on this weekend?
Okay, and I'll just go over him again. We won't get all into him, but Chuba Hubbard, obviously. The running backs are always thin on the waiver wire.
Right.
I know that's a particular pain point for you.
It really is.
Yeah. If Cordero Patterson is still out there, he got more run again this week and kind of contributed to Phantom's woes. You got the win, so it wasn't that bad.
I got 11 points out of Mike
yeah,
Davis.
it's not bad. But
if Atlanta, I mean, you got the core of it before. If Matt Ryan was any good,
right.
everybody would be, the tide raises all boats.
Sure.
So he would be doing better, too, if they just had more effectiveness from the quarter, in my mind.
Yeah, more TDs.
Because I'm an expert on the Falcons.
You're right.
Yeah, this is when fantasy just infuses real life. Yes, I know everything about the Falcons now.
Right.
They suck, and I hate them.
Yeah. And you're all over them. You've liked Matt Ryan for a while, so I know you.
I did like Matt
Yeah.
Ryan, but I didn't know about the selling his soul to the devil and all that stuff.
If you would have known, you wouldn't
If
have
I
picked
would
him.
have been told.
Yeah, but Chuba Hubbard gets Dallas and Philly the next 2 weeks. They're not tough matchups. They can be good and bad, but Philly's had a lot of injuries again already. They're kind of like the Niners. They're snake bit like that. So they've got some defensive line issues. They've got some secondary issues. And Chuba Hubbard should get some work in the passing game. So, again, if you're a CMC owner out there, get yourself some Chuba Hubbard.
Right.
If you need help at running back, go aggressively for Chuba Hubbard. I think you can start him this week. Christian McCaffrey's going to at least be out, and he might get you by. The other running back I'm going to highlight is Zach Moss.
Let me ask you a question before we get to Zach
okay.
Moss. If you do have Christian McCaffrey, as you talked about before, and you ran it down for us, should you just, even if you don't know exactly how long, should you just go out and get a running back anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Just to have another, even if Chuba Hubbard's not available, should you just go, because you figure your running back obviously is going to be a little bit thin because you lost your number one, but even if you have two guys you think are decent, should you just go get another guy?
I usually do. There's always going to be some wide receivers out there. So unless there's like a shining jewel, if some guy like Justin Jefferson last year when people dropped him on the waiver wire early because he wasn't doing well, or some guy,
rookies that don't get a lot of run early.
Yeah. So, or someone that everybody knows is going to be good and you happen to see them and you're like, I've got to get that wide receiver. Instead, no. Look, Christian McCaffrey has a hamstring. We've talked about it. He can get re-injured. He can get another soft tissue injury because he has that hamstring. Right. So now he's kind of damaged goods. You want to solidify your running back position if you have a ding on your running back depth. So I would always, unless there's some guy who's a different position that I really, really need, prioritize running back if your one of your top running backs is hurt.
All right. You were talking about Zach Moss.
Zach Moss, again, it's really thin, and he's kind of like Cordero Patterson. I don't know that he's going to win you a championship, but he's been scoring touchdowns, and he's been kind of overtaking Devin Singletary for the Buffalo Bills at running back. They don't really like to run, so how good is that? I don't really know, but he's been scoring touchdowns. He scored 15 and 18 points in PPR the last 2 weeks.
Not bad.
That's useful, and if it continues, he's someone just to grab in case of emergency. I can throw Zach Moss in. He might get me a touchdown. Right. At least Buffalo has a good offense. They get down there. They score a ton of points, and if they get stopped on the goal line, he's got a 50-50 shot with Devin Singletary, probably 60-40, to get that handoff and get you those points. And that'll make your week.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, did draft Singletary. I know I've been offered him a couple of times in trade talks.
Right.
And he's just the kind of guy that he's not punching through as far as, being the guy. If you're going to trade, like everybody wants to, my kids all they want Cortland Sutton.
Sure.
Okay, so they want to give me Singletary, and I'm like,
nah.
you got to give me a guy who's going to play, and I know he's going to be out there most of the time. Singletary was that, I think, at the beginning, right?
He was supposed to possibly be.
It's kind of like kind of evolved into a more of a single Mossitary kind of thing.
Yeah, and it always has been, honestly. Yeah. One of them will ascend, and the other one will go down a little bit, and then it'll kind of flip-flop. Going into this season, Singletary was the presumed starter, and Moss was kind of the backup guy. But Singletary hasn't done anything this season at all.
Right.
And Moss has actually done something 2 out of the 3 games, and the last 2 out of the 3, is when he did it. So he's on the ascension. It could totally change.
Right.
And that pie of running back points for the Buffalo Bills is not large. Josh Allen runs a lot of touchdowns in. They have a great passing attack. So it's not like you're getting a huge, person that's going to make a huge difference on your team. But if Devin Singletary gets hurt and you have Zach Moss, or like I said, in case of emergency in a bye week, you need to throw a guy in there. If he scores a touchdown, can get you 13 points. Zach Moss is your guy.
Yeah, they score a lot of points, so if you get the guy who's going to get the chunk of it from the backfield, it might be worth having.
Yeah, so he's someone, if you really need a running back or you're just trying to add to your depth, there are worse things you could do this week than pick him up. Wide receiver. Got to highlight this guy again because he's still widely available, and I think he's available in our family league, and that's Tim Patrick for the Denver.
I love Tim Patrick.
For the Denver Broncos, yeah, and we highlighted him last week as someone to get, and I didn't get him, and you didn't get him, and
I have 175 wide receivers.
But if I didn't have wide receivers, I would have, and we talked about how he was behind Courtland Sutton, and so was KJ Hamler. And you have Noah Fant there, so it was kind of like, he's pretty good. He has a good track record of scoring touchdowns. He's going to get 4 or 5 targets. Well, KJ Hamler's knee exploded. Okay, he tore his.
Don't sound so happy about it.
He tore his ACL, and it sounds like he has other damage, maybe PCL and MCL.
Well, our best out to KJ then.
Yeah, so he's done for this year and potentially longer. It was one of those.
Sucks.
Yeah, it's not good, especially for a wide receiver like that. Prayers up for Hamler, and hopefully he'll come back strong. But this opens the door for Patrick.
TP.
Yeah, and it opens up the door for Courtland Sutton even more. But if Tim Patrick's out there, go pick him up. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to see. Did I write down? Yeah, he scored 14.8 PPR points against the Jets. He's probably going to get you 12 to 15.
Respectable.
He's a guy you can just put in there and not worry about. I don't see his floor, his bad games being that low. So he's definitely someone I would add for wide receiver depth. I didn't write down who they're playing this week, but I think he has a decent matchup. So, and again, Courtland Sutton has an injury issue that he's coming off of. What if Courtland Sutton goes down? Then Tim Patrick.
Speaking that into existence.
Yeah, I have him too, so I hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, he carries injury risk. If it does, Tim Patrick is almost a league winner. So you got to go get him if he's out there on your waiver wire, people.
All right, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kenny Parker. That is the injury report, and that moves us along to the next segment in our show. And I hope people are understanding and appreciating the incredible workmanship that Stones McCoy has put into these new intros for our segments. I love them. So basically, that's all that matters. But the last one is I like this one because it gets down to the crux of fantasy football. It's like, hey, Kenny Parker, I don't know what's going on. Who would I put in? Who do I play?
Want to know what your best lineup is this week? Well, all you got to do is ask, who should I play on the cheat code?
3 parts to the Who Do I Play segment this time. First of all, I got another Parker's Process. Then we're going to play a new game that I just invented that means it probably sucks. Then we're going to have some questions. Hopefully, I don't know if Stones has got it. He just put out all the information for people to contact us stuff. If you got any questions, I know I have a question from a listener to ask you about basically who do I play, because that's the crux of this segment. But I wanted to start off with the Parker's Process 3.0, and this is something that's happened to me, and that's where I get most of my stuff. I picked. At the beginning of the season, I thought the Patriots' defense was going to be fantastic.
Right.
Because they all opted out last year, so they all were very well rested, and they all were pretty good when they were playing, right?
Yeah.
So I thought this is the year they're coming back. Belichick has something to prove. Brady won the Super Bowl. He's all mad, blah, blah, blah. And so far, they had a great game. One great game for me when they played against the rookie, and they scored a couple of touchdowns, and they scored like a bunch of points. Otherwise, they've been kind of
Right.
So my question to you, Mr. Kenny Parker of Parker's Process, I picked a defense, and this probably goes for a kicker as well, although I have Justin Tucker.
Yeah, you're not worried about that.
So even if he was terrible, I still would never get rid of him. So you pick a defense, and you kind of thought I was going to, I'm going to take a defense and kind of ride with them the whole year and pick somebody up on bye weeks, but that's the way I'm going to play it. And then all of a sudden, it's kind of like they're So how do I dig in there? How do I find myself a new defense, or do I just kind of go and play defense by the week?
Yeah, streaming defense, I think, is the right process to do for your fantasy league. Every year there's one or two defenses. I think 2 years ago maybe it was when the Niners went to the Super Bowl, it was like the Niners and the Patriots were just dominant all year. When the Bears got Khalil Mack, they just started dominating and scoring a lot of fantasy points, but it doesn't tend to last. And defense's scoring in fantasy is really, really matchup dependent. Really, really matchup dependent.
So my plan of taking whoever goes against Trevor Lawrence is a good idea?
That's a good one. Anyone going against Trevor Lawrence, anyone going against the Jets, those are the two that I've identified so far. Yeah, they are just – Zach Wilson is a turnover machine. But my biggest point, and I think I wrote this out, is don't get married to any one defense. I don't care.
Even if they have Aaron Donald?
Yeah, and we talked about that last
Aaron
week.
Donald.
And again, they only scored 3 points this week, so sorry out there to what was the guy's fantasy name? Dixon Siders.
Oh, yeah, Dixon
Yeah.
Siders. That's right, yeah.
His question was more about offensive players to
Right.
play, and he was concerned
Against
about Tom
the
Brady.
defense, yes.
And that came through. Our process came through. Tom Brady had a decent game, although it took garbage time to get him there. But even the Rams, I have the Rams in one league. I dropped them today. I dropped them as bait for the waiver wire because I'm going after a different defense.
You're kind of doing a little, okay, look over here, I'm going over here.
Yeah, and I'm
I
going
like the misdirection.
I'm going for the Cincinnati Bengals, due to their matchup. So I think
because they play the Steelers.
yeah, well, anytime you're evaluating a defense, you want to try to pick a defense. The first thing I do is I click on them and I look at sacks. And
Okay.
turnovers, pick sixes, that stuff just happens. Okay, it's not really a
But
sticky
getting
stat.
the pressure on the quarterback is
Getting
where it
pressure,
starts. Yeah.
And if you can find, most people don't get into pressures, but if you can find that information, which you can on PFF, if you can find a team that pressures and sacks, and then they're going up against a really good matchup, it's a marriage made in heaven. You know what I mean? So I would rather play, though, even a crappy defense in a good matchup than an average to good matchup
Right.
against Tom Brady.
So you're recommending I take a new defense every week?
Yeah, and that's what I do. And
Okay,
a lot of
well,
times what I
go.
what I really like to do, and I do this most of the time, and I think I did it with the Broncos, who I played against Kyle this week in our family league. I like to find a team that has two good matchups. And then I get them the week before, And
Kind of like,
yeah,
fan,
and
I don't want these guys. I just want them for this week.
Yeah,
That's
no
all.
one's paying attention.
I don't want them for next week.
Yeah,
no.
and I especially do this towards the end of the year and around the playoffs. I especially do that. I'll pick a team that's playing like a juggernaut offense that no one's going to – but then they have two good matchups week 15 and 16 of the playoffs or whatever. Oh, it feels so nice. Everybody goes to get them.
It's not
They're
easy
already
being a-
on your team.
He's a fantasy guru, ladies and
You got
gentlemen.
to pounce on these guys.
It's not even being a guru. You just do your work.
You just do
the
your work. Just look ahead. But, yeah, if you can find a team that gets 3 or 4 good matchups, even better. But what you really want to look for is a top 10 type defense with a good matchup that week and lock them up. There's always 1 or 2 available. There's always a good matchup available. And even like I said, if you have to play an average to bad defense in a good matchup, go for it.
Just to get there. Now, I mean, we have kidded a couple times today. I mean, I have Justin Tucker, so I'm never switching. But people, if that's a situation with your kicker, let's just say you have a kicker. Let's say you took the Chargers kicker or something. He's missing everything, and easy they're going to be replaced, or you have to replace him. How do you go about? Do you just go, well, this guy gets the most field goals, or this guy scores the most points? How do you go about grabbing a new kicker, or do you do it weekly for that too?
I don't do it weekly. Kickers, I usually try to find a guy and stick with him based on his offense. And kind of the criteria I like is you want to click on the guy, especially now that we have 3 weeks. If your kicker hasn't been doing well, click on him, and you want to find the guys that are like 8, 13, 10, or even better, 10, 13, 14.
So consistently he's scoring 9 double digits.
Yeah,
right.
and then you look at his percentage. Is he making 3 out of 4 kicks, 5 out of 6 kicks? Is he making 50 plus? Does he have that in his arsenal?
And how many kicks is he getting?
Right. Usually, I also like a guy like on Minnesota or someplace where they play in a dome at least half the time.
Right.
The Cowboys is a great example. I picked up Zerline to start the year, but I dropped him like a bad habit.
I saw that.
Brandon McManus in Denver, you can kick forever.
Yes.
I loved the matchup. Again, I think it was against the rookie. I think he got me like 19 points or something. Brandon McManus. It was ridiculous how well that worked out for me. It was at least in the teens. I know that. But the other thing I like to look for when I ride a kicker is a guy like Dan Carlson, a guy that's on a team where the coach is kind of old school, like John Gruden,
right.
or Campbell from the Lions. Their offense isn't good enough, but a team that can move the ball but doesn't always score.
And
but
they like to go for the field
yeah,
goal.
and their coach will go, just take the points.
Just take the
That's
3.
what you're supposed to do.
I love
Screw
that.
analytics.
I love that.
love those
Yeah.
guys for my kickers
Okay.
because then they're going to kick those 40, 50-yard field goals, not go for it on 4th down.
Right.
Where if you got Aaron Rodgers up there, he might go for it. You
He
got
might.
the Chiefs. They're going to go for it,
Right.
and it just breaks your heart. You're like, oh, I should have had 4 points
Absolutely.
there, right? So that's the kind of those are the kind of criteria I look. Good situation as far as a dome or if they're kicking in Denver against Denver and they have a high-powered offense and it's a guy who scores around 10 points a week, target those kind of guys and pick them up and ride them for a while if you can.
Question I'm just pretend I just got, but I just made it up myself. If Justin Tucker got traded to Denver, how far could he kick it?
80 yards.
80 yards. You've heard it here. He's a fantasy
At
guru.
least.
He would know. Well, thank you. That is Parker's process in the Who to Play. Now I want to move to the second part, and this is a game I just invented the other day because I was tired. It's called Pick Up, Drop, Sit, Play, or Trade.
I like this.
And it's basically I'm going to give you a guy, and you tell me what I should do with him.
Yep.
If you have him, if you don't have him, what you do with him. And I'm going to start off with a guy who kind of got a resurgence, but still Saquon Barkley has always been a guy in the fantasy that everybody kind of wants, but then they don't want, and now we don't know what to do with.
Well, and when you've been burned the way me
Yeah.
and you have, we have that visceral reaction.
Yes.
We're like, something bad's going to happen, right?
Yes.
But I will say this. If you want to know what the Parker's process says, it says play Saquon, don't trade him. That's my feeling.
Yeah, those are the only two ones really we're thinking about.
Yeah.
Is trade him or play him.
Trade him or play him is the only thing. And if you did want to trade him, now's probably the time. He scored 21.4 fantasy points this week, even with a touchdown. I mean, 21.4. He had a nice game, and he's really rounding into form. But I will say I went back and watched his film. He looks explosive. He's starting to look like the guy he was before when we all loved him.
Right.
And I thought that guy might be gone. I think that guy's coming back. So the Giants have a horrible offense, a crappy coach, and a terrible setup.
Oh, horrible field.
Yeah,
and
terrible-
I don't like this. They play
yeah.
in New Jersey.
Yeah, and-
I don't like their uniform.
And they have a really tough matchup against the Saints on the ground this week.
Saints are tough, yeah.
But Sterling Shepard's injured. Darius Slayton's injured. Everyone's injured. Saquon's going to get the targets to kind of make up for the fact that he may struggle a little bit on the ground. And he's always a threat for that big 80-yard run for a touchdown or 40-yard run. He'll probably break some kind of decent play and get his rushing yards up 50, 60 yards. And then if he can get you the catches and get you a touchdown,
Right.
all the greater. And then going forward, I would play him with confidence. So to me, he's a locked-in starter for now unless we see him start to regress.
And the thing you said about him looking like we want him to look kind of goes to the next guy I want to talk to you about, because this is a guy that when I saw him this year, and especially the other night, and I saw him and I looked at him and I go, I think that guy's back. So that's Ezekiel Elliott.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Zeke had a good game last night, and I think obviously you're going to play Ezekiel Elliott if you have him. I want to talk more about Tony Pollard, because this is a guy who's almost he's not the number one running back, but he's 1.5. Can you get scenarios where he is good enough that you would go ahead and play Tony Pollard?
Yeah, especially in your flex, or if you're in a league that has multiple flex positions where you're starting like 5 or 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and 2 flex. So you have real deep starting lineup. He's definitely in consideration for one of those spots. But I just wrote it down so I'd have it in front of me. He went for 8.3 points, then 23 points, then 7.5 this week.
Right.
And in PPR, that's what he's going to do. But going into this game, Zeke had been seriously disrespected and talked about, especially the fantasy. Everybody's barking and saying stuff. It got back to him. It got back to the team.
Wait a minute. The fantasy talk got back to him?
It does. The players, they get hit up. People are crazy.
I know.
Okay?
I've seen
and
that. Usually that's
I've done that
horrible.
dance. Okay, I have messaged a player, not to threaten to kill their family or anything, but like
What?
I have messaged a player or two and been like,
I
good
messaged Justin Tucker with a proposal, but that's a different thing.
But it's usually to like, bounce back king or something like that, right? But anyway,
okay. I somehow think it wasn't that, but okay.
you could tell going into this game, everything just kind of set up perfectly. The one thing I will say, in analytics circles, we all knew Zeke was getting still 65% of the snaps, and Pollard was getting 35%. Pollard looks really good and explosive on those 35%. But it's a little different when you have to carry the whole load.
Exactly.
I look at Pollard kind of like as a poor man's Kareem Hunt. And when I say poor
Okay.
man's, slightly. So I think you can start Kareem Hunt most weeks, but there are some weeks he's going to get you 6-8 points, and you're going to be like, he didn't
Right.
kill me, but it was a bad, But then they'll blow up for over 20 points on a good week. And that's going to happen 4 or 5 times this year. So Pollard's not the worst guy you can start in your flex, but if you only have one flex position, I would try to get someone better in there most weeks. If they have a great matchup, if Zeke's dinged up, or if Zeke's injured, holy cow, Pollard's a
Yeah.
league winner. That's
So
another
you wanna
reason.
have him anyway.
That's
yeah.
another reason you never drop Tony Pollard.
Right.
Okay, and if he has another couple blow-up weeks, if you can trade him for something good, then sometimes I would recommend that too, because he's the player that's capable of kind of overproducing and getting people are
Right.
enamored with this guy.
Well, it seems like he has his ceiling is pretty high, but he's only going to reach it once every 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks.
That's how
because
I feel.
especially if Zeke goes. Okay, this next guy we're really just playing pickup or drop or sit, and I just got him on because he had a touchdown last week, Peyton Barber.
Oh God,
I just thought, he looked really good running the ball,
It's
so I
just
said
ridiculous.
you should pick him up. So I picked him up.
it's just John Gruden. It's like he came out. And everybody's like, so Jacobs is hurt. Drake's the guy, right? Because Drake had looked pretty
Right,
good.
That's the guy.
He's been getting catches. He's been running really hard and well and getting yards after the tackle. And Gruden's like, nah, man, we got Peyton Barber. I loved that guy in Tampa, which was like 3 teams ago.
That's why you take his kicker.
Yeah, it's
because,
like
he's old school. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like,
I
does
had him in Tampa
yeah.
in 2003.
Yeah, and dang it if Gruden wasn't serious, because he gave Peyton Barber 23 carries,
Yeah. What did he do? What did he do, my friend?
111 yards,
Hello.
and a touchdown. I will say almost all of that came in the last half of the fourth quarter when Miami was really worn down. And Miami,
Good.
yeah, it was a good strategy. It worked, and, far be it from me. Gruden's showing he knows what he's doing so far this year. But it just seemed kind of ridiculous to me. So I don't know what he's going to do. One, I don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to come back.
That's obviously the key.
Yeah, he's got the toe. They're saying he practiced last week in a non-contact jersey, so he was out there running. I don't know how hard he was cutting or anything. I suspect he may be back this week. But Peyton Barber's not a bad pickup, because Jacobs has shown a tendency to get injured. He's already carrying injuries. He could get injured again. And Peyton Barber's one of those guys, again, you can throw in there. And, geez, if he doesn't get you 111 yards on the ground and 31 yards through the air on 3 catches and a touchdown, I mean, if someone picked him up and played him this week, God bless you.
That was the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you figured that out, yeah.
So he's not a bad person to pick up for running back depth.
Especially for me. All right, last 2. I want to get to the questions too, but I think these are interesting. And this one, remember, we're playing. This actually goes the gauntlet: pick up, trade, sit, drop, play. I don't know. Rookie quarterbacks.
Okay. I love that.
What if I have rookie? What am I doing with myself?
You're not feeling too good. So I
How
love.
did you know? Was
Yeah.
it the Band-Aid?
I love that you asked me this question. So the only thing I wrote down is Trey Lance, if he's not on anybody's team, is worth a pickup and
So you
hold,
pick up Trey.
because we haven't seen yet, other than we've seen he rushed a touchdown in last week and he played good in the preseason. But we haven't seen that he completely sucks, which is what we've seen from the other guys.
So we put him in the safe deposit box and take him out later, maybe.
Yeah, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones,
That's the rest.
they're all watch list. I call them watch list guys, which means you don't pick them up yet. You're watching them.
Do I drop him if I have him?
The only one that I might not is Trevor Lawrence, although he seems to be one of the worst rookie quarterbacks as far as his accuracy for his targets.
Well, his team is awful.
He's worse than like Seneca Wallace. Okay, he's horrible.
Peyton Manning threw like 800.
That's
interceptions this
true,
first
but
year.
like there's some analytics that show he's really, really playing badly. Now, again, going back to last week, I think some of that has to do with his coaching staff.
His coach literally is in college.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he seems ill-prepared. Let's just put it that way. If you want to hold on to Trevor Lawrence, I don't blame you. But if you need something, go ahead and drop him for that something, especially if you're 1-2 or 0-3 and your team's not very good and you're carrying 2 quarterbacks in a redraft league.
right.
No. Drop Trevor Lawrence. He's sucking.
you know, if you go to a brewery and you go, let me try it. Let me try a beer, and they give you the beer, and you try it, and you go, that was a horrible idea. That's Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to this is a horrible idea.
And
I
you
don't know
never
why I'm doing
go,
it."
oh, I should order that beer
No,
again right now.
No, I never go, hey, give me another one of
Yeah.
those, hon.
Yeah.
You know, you shouldn't say hon.
So
either.
he's very talented. You know, he's, all-time prospect. He could turn it around. But
I'm not giving up on the guy as a player, obviously, but, I mean, I really think if you have, he's a drop, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Zach Wilson's a drop. He looks horrible.
You're already out of the league for
He's a
picking him up.
turnover machine. Everybody target him with your defensive
'Cause
starts.
his offense is pretty good, too.
And then Justin Fields, we all had high hopes for him, and he just got the stuff stomped out of him this week. He looks like he's holding on to the ball too long and not making good decisions. And I don't have much faith in his coach either.
That's the thing.
His-
I've never heard more people on TV and radio criticize a coach
Yeah.
more than they've criticized the Bears, Matt Nagy, right?
Yeah.
For what he's done to Justin Fields in like one game.
Yeah, well, and he's talking about starting Nick Foles. He's like, well, if Andy can't go, maybe we'll start Nick Foles.
You can't start the rookie and then take him
yeah,
out.
you know
can't
what
do
that does to his
Psychologically,
confidence. Yeah.
Come on, I went to college. I know.
So I don't like that. Again, lots of talent, looked good in the preseason, could turn it around, but he's totally a drop for me right now. Now watch, he'll come out and have a great game.
No,
next
but,
week.
but even if he does, you're going on, as we always say with you, I don't even know if we've said it this year, but we've said it in years past, you work with probabilities.
Yep.
And the probability of Justin Fields being good right now is very low.
Yeah.
Considering that he doesn't know how to play the position. It's a totally different game. We always say this about college quarterbacks coming to the pros. It looks like he's making throws, and he's not expecting people to be able to close on them, and it's professional football.
Yeah.
And people are getting there twice as fast as they did when you're playing, Minnesota.
Sure.
Or Iowa or something. No offense to Iowa, but still.
Absolutely.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying.
Totally.
So that's the rookie quarterbacks. Finally, we've touched on it's two groups I want to ask you about.
Okay.
And both of them, one of them is because there's so many of them, and the other one is because, as you've already described, I don't know what's going on under center, and it's the Arizona and Pittsburgh wide receiver groups. What do I keep? If I have those wide receivers, do I keep them? Do I drop them? Which ones do I play, more importantly, and which ones do I sit?
I think at this point they're all holds, and A.J. Green is just playing out of his mind.
So if I have him, I hold him.
You hold him, and you may start him if you're, desperate enough and your team is thin enough. I don't think he's the worst flex option in the world just because he's tied to Kyler Murray. And this week was weird. Again, Hopkins had a bad game. Rondale Moore, horrible game.
Yeah,
we had all this hope for him.
Little person, yeah.
Yeah, and then Kirk and Green both go for 100 yards.
Yeah.
It's just there's no rhyme or reason right now.
Yeah.
Hopkins is a start, okay? You have to think.
But you have to worry about his injury report, right?
That's true, but I think he'll be better this week.
All right.
And their matchup, they have a tough matchup. Are they playing?
I think they're playing the Rams.
Yeah, they're playing the Rams. So then you got to worry about Ramsey, but Ramsey is not following. That may change with Hopkins, but he's playing what they call the star position. So he's kind of all over the field.
All over the place.
Yeah, and they've got threats all over the field. So I don't think he's going to get the star treatment. But they have a good defense. Let's just put it that way.
Yes.
But this goes back to what we talked about last week. When the chips are down, I think this is going to be a high-scoring game because Cooper Kupp seems to be like the greatest thing that's ever been invented.
If he was ever on Justin Tucker's team, it would be
Oh, my God, invincible.
That would be the best.
But I think it's going to be Arizona's going to need to score a lot of points, and they're going to have trouble doing it. And when that happens, you go to your guy.
To your guys.
And your guy is Hopkins. Yeah. He's the guy that can make the plays. I will say his target share is down about 10 points this year, which is a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah, so, instead of getting 28%, he's down to like 18. Some of it probably is due to the injury, and it's only been 3 games. But like we said, he's spreading the ball around. But you got to start him. Rondale Moore is a hold. He's an upside season-long play. That's why I picked him up off the waiver wire.
Tuck him away and wait.
Chill.
Yeah.
And Kirk and Green are kind of like spot start stream guys. They'll be great for buys probably, and if Kirk's available, I don't think he's the worst pickup on the waiver wire. He's probably not, but if he's out there, those are the kind of guys. That's where I would start him during bye weeks. Stuff like that.
People forget how great A.J. Green was a couple years ago.
Well, we thought he was washed.
He was incredible. I know you love seeing that. You love seeing a guy come back. And you would like to see it with Julio as well.
I did make this one note. If Green continues to do this for another game, like he has another big game, if you can trade him for something, go for it. Okay.
So sell high.
Sell high.
Right.
Again, on any of these guys, even Rondale Moore, maybe not Rondale Moore because he's just such an unknown potential guy. But if Kirk or Green string off 2 or 3 games and Green's already in the fire,
right,
go ahead and trade him if you can get something for him. It's not the worst idea. They're not going to be able to do this all year, and Hopkins is he's going to be the alpha. Pittsburgh, we talked about their offense. I'm not confident in hardly anything. The thing is, if Deontay's hurt and Juju's hurt, Claypool's a start.
So you've got to start Claypool.
Yeah.
Then. Yeah.
And if Deontay's hurt or Juju's hurt, I still think Claypool's a start. He's just a flex. But he can score 3 touchdowns in one game. We saw that. The problem is he's tied to Big Ben washed.
Yes.
Big Ben game over. So
Big Ben, I can't throw it to you.
Yeah.
Come closer.
I think
come a little bit closer.
His ceiling is kind of limited, especially because he's a big play down the field guy. He'll catch some slants, but if Ben can't do that, his maximizing Claypool's value isn't going to happen. So Najee Harris, I'm really
It's tough when your guy is being targeted 19 times in the backfield if you've
Yeah.
got the wide receivers.
exactly, and that's how Juju was. So I don't think Juju's the worst start in the world. I have a buddy. Shout out to David Beard out there. He's constantly
I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah, he's constantly been going between Juju and Tyler Boyd. I think I've told him to play the right guy both times, but now I'd probably lean more Tyler Boyd with as bad as Ben has been, especially now Juju's dinged up. Even if he plays this week, he might be somewhat limited. I would probably play Boyd over Juju going forward.
All right.
If you're desperate, play Juju. He can always score a touchdown and break a big play, but I'm starting to fade Juju.
Yeah, you got the X factor, and his name is Ben. Okay,
Ben,
so
yeah.
Thank you very much, Kenny Parker. Now it's time for us to ask any listener questions. Stones, I know that you were soliciting questions out there. Did you get any of them? Because I got one I can throw at our guy Kenny Parker here.
Absolutely. I have a couple.
Excellent.
But what I'd like you to do is go ahead and throw yours out there first.
Mine's a quick one because
yeah.
it comes from one of your biggest foes, Zach.
Okay.
He's got injury problems with his wide receivers, which I think we all do. So he's down to his third receiver is going to be Ruggs or Waddle. Now I know Ruggs has been effective lately. Waddle, when you watch him, you're saying this guy's totally got
Good.
it. So it's kind of a either or in his mind. He says, take it to the fantasy guru, see what he says.
I'm a little concerned about Waddle due to his quarterback situation. Although his quarterback played with a lot of guts this past week.
That's not the same thing as playing well, though.
Yeah, that's true. But he, for fantasy at least, he produced. I don't have Waddle's numbers in front of me from last week, but my gut says to play Ruggs. As crazy as that sounds, he looks really good, and my kind of evaluation between Bryan Edwards and Henry Ruggs has started to lean Ruggs. But that's a very, very good question, Zach. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. Again, my initial...
He knows that because he knows this is a question that we're springing on you at the moment. But with Ruggs, it seems like he and Carr have kind of evolved a little bit, and they're using that. I mean, he's got the speed.
Yeah.
And all the way back to Cliff Branch, that's what the Raiders want. And it seems like they're finding a way to use that.
Yeah, and Devonta Parker's coming back in to Miami, and Fuller's back, and Gesicki had a big game. So I worry there's not enough to go around there, and Waddle concerns me. I do think, like in Dynasty, I love Jalen Waddle. I think he's a great receiver.
Yeah.
And he's getting it, but I'd probably feel more comfortable starting Ruggs. If I notice something different when I look at the numbers, Zach, I'll message you because I'm not playing you this week.
That's the kind of service you get if he's not playing you, ladies and gentlemen. Stones, what do you got from the line?
I don't know if I'm playing Zach or if I'm playing Kyle. So
neither one of them are worth a damn.
Okay, well,
Kyle is.
I believe I'm playing one of the two. So first, I'd like to. We're going to go back to last week and give. We're going to give the guru a little recognition, I guess. I didn't see this one coming. We had number one pain in the ass fan. I'm not sure if you know who that is, but that's Steven Hernandez.
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
And he had the team Dixon Cider.
Right.
You
and
remember him.
He had asked you the question in regards to, do I play my quarterback against
my defense?
My defense. And you would give him an answer, and the answer was, well, in this situation, I think you can. And he did, and he won.
Great.
There you go.
So I'm relaying a message. Your
Good.
advice
I was worried
worked.
about that, actually.
Yes.
He played his QB against the Rams defense, and he won big. So
I appreciate that.
One listener we kept. Way to go, Fantasy Guru.
that was a big one. Now, this question or this comment is coming in directly because of knowledge that he gained tonight by listening to the show.
Okay.
The same person, Dixon Cider,
I love this guy.
has dropped L.A. defense, and I don't know if that's the Rams or Chargers because it doesn't tell me.
Very good.
And has picked up Cincinnati.
Oh, I love it.
So I'm just letting you know that the people are listening, and they're following your advice, and so far it's paying off.
He's having an effect on people.
Like I said,
that.
the Rams have Arizona, and I don't think they're going to do that well, and they have a tough schedule going forward. So I think that's a fine move.
All right. So here's the first question that came in, and these are both anonymous. I wish I could give them names, but I cannot do so.
2 questions sounds good.
That's so this person is in a 10-team league, 3 wide receivers. Okay. That they're playing 2 wide receivers and a flex. Okay. And the situation that they currently are in the flex position is Adam Thielen or Marvin Jones a better flex option for this this upcoming week. Now Marvin Jones plays at Cincinnati,
Right.
and Adam Thielen is versus Cleveland at home.
Okay. Great question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is a tough one, and it could go either way. It's a good question because it's close. But if it was me, I would stay in the Flames with Adam Thielen. He's just getting targeted in the red zone and playing really, really well with Kirk Cousins. I'm going to put my marker on
Stay
Kirk
with the
Cousins
hot
this week.
quarterback, yeah.
We talked about it. It's a test. It's a litmus test. But if it was me, I would go with Thielen there. I just think he has a little bit higher upside and a little bit safer floor. But honestly, it's a good problem to have. I would start either of them in your flex if it was me and think it was a good start. So,
Sounds
again,
good.
Thielen's the guy I would take, though.
Okay.
I hope I get these.
Another question come in was in regards to the San Francisco 49ers defense. They've been highly rated, especially the last several years. This person wants to know, can I be confident in sticking with the Niners defense with the current issues in the secondary?
No.
There you go.
Especially in fantasy. And they just continue to have injuries. Norman got injured this week, and I forget another guy in the secondary got injured, and they're bringing in more guys. They have a good pass rush. Bosa and Ford are no joke, but against Seattle, especially this week, even though it's in San Francisco, I'm going to be at the game, and I hope that they destroy
I'm glad
them.
you dropped that in there.
Yeah.
That makes a difference.
I think that for fantasy, the chance that Russ gets behind him with Lockett or Metcalf, has a good game is pretty high. So as far as probability and fantasy, I think there are better options out there. I would take Tennessee over them this week. I would take Cincinnati over them. If the Saints are out there, I would take the Saints over them.
You've already delineated what they should do if they're trying to pick up a defense.
Yeah.
So go back and listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
There you
You'll
go.
find out.
But,
That's fantastic.
but yeah, the Niners could. They have talent, but that secondary is beat up, and that's one of Seattle's strengths. You don't like that matchup, and if you don't like the matchup, you don't want to start the DST.
Fantastic.
I'd be fine dropping them for somebody else.
You got
All right.
one more, Stones?
I got one more
Okay.
because this is a 8-team league, and
18.
Ooh,
this
these
is
are
an
tough.
this is an 8-team
So there's
league.
talent everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're looking to fill the flex position in this 8-team league. And the current options are Chris Carson or Mike Williams.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so at this point,
Good luck with that one.
Well, Chris Carson is going up against the Niners, and that line is stout, but he's in the past had good games against the 49ers. But Mike Williams, if Cooper Kupp is the greatest pick this year during draft season that nobody saw coming, Mike Williams just raised him even more. Mike Williams is insane right now. You have to start him. So if it was me, I would start him with Herbert. Again, I think they have a high-scoring game with a high over-under, but Mike Williams is the one for me. I know that's crazy, but we're talking about an 8-team league here.
If it's an 8-team league, who is his wide receivers? If he's got Mike Williams, he's relegated to the flex.
Well, Mike Williams was like a 7th or an 8th round pick.
I
in
know,
draft
but
season,
I've
so he's
watched
probably got Tyreek and somebody else good.
I believe one of them is Justin Jefferson.
That's a good one
Not
too.
bad.
I believe that's one of them.
Thank you,
So.
Stones McCoy. That's how you get questions on here. You go ahead and stonesradio@yahoo.com on the email.
That's
Or you
right.
can tweet us.
I'm
or
going to
you can
flash it
text-
back up on the screen
That's
real
right.
quick.
It's going to be right on there. You can
Yeah.
tweet us questions. Or you can text them in to us. Just let Stones know. He'll get it on the air. We'll do that at the end of every podcast. Kenny, that is it. The cheat code is over for another day. I think you did a fine job. You came through. You were a little bit down in the beginning, but I think talking about fantasy has got you back on top of the world. Stones McCoy, thanks for helping us. We appreciate it. Oh, reminder, this Friday on the Stones Radio Networks, the return of the show that launched the network, the Stones and Toy Show is back.
All right.
This Friday, 5:30. Do not miss it. It's Stones. It's Toy. I don't like them. Maybe you will. Thanks for checking us out. We're back next week on Tuesday at 6 for Kenny Parker. For Stones McCoy, I'm the Phantom. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Phantom.